Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to On the Couch podcast. I'm your host, Nazario and Here on this podcast, we will preview sports, talk about sports news, and recap previous sports games. We also will do special interviews with high school athletes and some college athletes. If you like sports, well, you're going to want to tune in to On the Couch podcast. Now to your host, Nazario Pangallo. I'm your host, Nazario Pangallo, and today we are starting a brand new segment called But Suppose. I'm here with the first-time guest on the show, Matthew Kappas.
What's up? It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, on this segment called But Suppose, we will take different scenarios and provide a but suppose or a what if to these situations. Now, beginning, we're going to be talking about the Clutter Murders. Now, if you don't know what that is, I believe it was 1958, if I'm not wrong, Matthew?
I think it was that year.
1958 in Kansas, 4 members of the Clutter family were murdered on a random normal night of the year. Now, why were they murdered? Because 2 men, Dick Hickok and Perry, wanted to rob their house and steal their money. They were told there was a safe with a lot of money in this house. When they got there, the safe was not there, and they decided to murder this poor family. But what is the but suppose of this situation, Matt?
We're gonna be but supposing if Bobby, Nancy's boyfriend, took her out on the night before instead of
the other night. Yes, you're right, Matt. So Bobby took her out to the movies, I believe it was 2 nights before, and they didn't get back, I think they said, till about 2 a.m. So if Bobby did this the night of the murders, Nancy obviously probably would have been spared, probably wouldn't have been killed. But is it possible, Matthew, that when this happened, when they arrived back home, that the 2 murderers could have still been at the house, and could they have helped to stop this murder?
Yeah, I think Bobby, he played basketball, so obviously he's gonna be a pretty big kid. I think that Bobby and Nancy getting back, I think that Dick and Perry would have been already gone because they did not want to deal with a whole nother person, especially a male who is biologically stronger. And because Perry was already thinking about leaving, Perry drove off from the house and thinking about whether or not he wanted to, and then he came back because he had second thoughts and wanted to go back. So I think Bobby coming back would have definitely swayed them to leave.
All right, and another but suppose from this night is Bobby was there earlier in the night before the murders happened. But suppose Bobby had stayed a little bit longer and had been there when the murderers arrived. To me, this would have changed it in a big way, because if they see Mr. Clutter, their son, and Bobby there, that's 3 males. That's pretty tough for 2 dudes to take down 3 males, especially if one of them were awake to alert the others, or possibly all 3 were awake the entire time. It would have been very tough, even with the shotgun, to take them down without killing them. They might have just had to kill them right off the bat.
Yeah, like I said before, Bobby's a pretty big kid, along with what's the son's
Kenyon, that's what his name is.
and then Herb. They're all 3 pretty big guys. So I think Perry being a shorter guy and then Dick not being as stocky, I think they could have easily taken him down.
All right, so that's it for the Clutter Murders. Now, quick commercial. Shout out to who, Matt?
Trojan.
Trojan. Thank you, Trojan, for sponsoring this video. If you don't know what Trojan is, just look it up, Mr. Ash. But on to our next situation. So, LeBron James came straight out of high school, went straight to the NBA. He's one of the most highly touted prospects, possibly of all time, definitely probably top 5. And, even Michael Jordan didn't come straight out of high school. What Kobe did and LeBron did, 2 most memorable people to come out of high school. But, Matthew, what if suppose LeBron James went to college?
I think LeBron would have won the national championship for sure, and I don't think his NBA story would have gone any different. I mean, people would have a little bit of different case coming from him being through college and then not being a high school kid, but I think he would have had a great NBA career as he is still right now. So I think he would have done pretty much the same stuff as he is now. It's just he would have maybe won a national championship and maybe he had like an injury or two in college and maybe set him back a little bit. But I think he would overall still be a great NBA player as he is today.
All right, but suppose this, Matt. LeBron James goes to college. What happens if he tears his ACL or any other injury? Imagine that. LeBron James gets a career ending injury in college, winds up never playing in the NBA. Could you imagine LeBron James, quite possibly the best player in NBA history, never to play an NBA game because of college? Now, obviously, this never happened and can't ever happen, but just suppose that, ladies and gentlemen. Imagine that in your minds, LeBron James. Imagine how the past 15 years of the NBA would have changed. No LeBron in the NBA. You would be talking about Kobe and MJ possibly as the two best players. There would be no LeBron talk. There would be Kevin Durant, Giannis, and Kawhi easily as the best players in the NBA right now, and Steph Curry, of course. But LeBron wouldn't have been talked about like he is. He is the most talked about NBA player probably of all time, especially with social media. I mean, just imagine that, Matt. What a crazy situation.
Yeah, obviously, and Kobe and the Michael Jordan's on a different level. It was a great It was a horrible tragedy. I mean, last year or it
2
was
years ago.
2 years ago, Kobe Bryant in the helicopter crash. It was horrible, but I think that kind of like rose his career a little bit. But everybody knows it's between LeBron and Michael Jordan. So if LeBron never played, it's Michael Jordan being the
Mm-hmm.
greatest of all time. I don't think there's any debate about that. And yeah, LeBron, he's been in the league for such a long time now, and if he ever never played in the NBA, I mean, everything would have gone different. It would just be insane.
All right, so now let's move away for sports for once. We're going to come back to sports in just a couple minutes. So back on December 7th, 1941, World War II was going on, but the big thing of that day was the Japanese decided to bomb Pearl Harbor. Sneak attack, and at that day, the Japanese were pretty excited. They were like, "Oh my gosh, we just took out the U.S. Navy. We're looking pretty good. We think we can win this war." But they did not know what was going to happen. They wound up waking the sleeping giant, as it is said. They woke up the U.S. military, and this really swayed the U.S. to join the World War II. Now, if this doesn't happen, Matt, imagine, but suppose that the Japanese don't bomb Pearl Harbor. How do you think this would have changed historically, just to change history?
I think America would have joined a little bit later, but obviously America wouldn't have sent held on to Japan, blowing up pretty much your whole country. And I think that really changed their course of their history. And if that didn't happen, I mean, who knows what could have happened in the World War II? I mean, the Germans could have defeated the whole country and then eliminated the Jews, but it didn't happen, and America joined, so we'll never know.
That's true. That's true. To me, if this event does not happen, I mean, I'm not seeing too big of a difference. I'm saying probably at max 2 years before the U.S. joined World War II. There's no way, after hearing what all has happened with the Germans, with the Japanese, how horrible those two countries were during these wars. I don't see how the U.S. could have lasted longer than 2 years without joining this thing. And let's be real, without the U.S. help, the Europeans, British, they would not have been able to win this war. But if they don't join in 2 years, if this event doesn't happen, they might have been able to take over the British, and it could have been really a war on both sides for the U.S. between the Germans and the Japanese. So realistically, it helped Japanese at this time to take out the U.S. Navy, but in the long run, this might have been a terrible decision, even though they were able to take out so many U.S. ships and men. All right, so let's move back to the sports world, Kappas. So, but suppose in 1993, Michael Jordan does not retire to go play the game of baseball. Michael Jordan had already completed a three-peat of the NBA Finals. He was the best player in the NBA. What would have happened, Matt, if he did not retire?
So I just looked it up, and MJ was 30 years old when he retired, and obviously 30 years old is pretty early for people to retire, especially in today's age with all the new medicine. So if you would have heard about like say LeBron retiring at that age, I mean it would have changed the whole course of history because like MJ coming off the three-peat, I mean he could have gone for even more because he was still pretty good in his prime, but his 30 is not too late. So I think he could have maybe put another couple of rings on his finger. I mean, who knows?
MJ. He took about, I believe it was a 2-year break before he came back and won another three-peat. Now, when he came back, we saw what baseball had done to him. He lost a little bit of stamina. He was gassed a little bit when playing the Magic in the Eastern Conference Finals. We can see that in The Last Dance. I remember watching that. If MJ does not retire to go play baseball for these 2 years, they could have possibly gone on a 7-game finals streak. They could have won 7 straight finals. They had Scotty, they had Michael. That's all you really needed. That team, those two can completely carry a team to the finals and win it all. I mean, if you look at some of the dudes MJ played with, Steve Kerr, the most notable to me. I mean, if you look at Steve Kerr, there's no way that dude's playing in the NBA these days. I'm going to look up the Chicago Bulls finals winning team and look at who those dudes had. And, MJ, he had a fun time in the MLB, but it was never anything like his NBA career. So to me, when MJ was not there in 1994 to 1995, they went 47-35. They finished third in the NBA Central Division, and they lost in the Eastern Conference semis. I believe this was the year MJ came back and in the playoffs. Yes, that's correct. But their team, they had random dudes like Steve Kerr, I don't even know how to say that. Tony Kukoc, he was pretty good. Their third best player. Scotty, Bill Wennington. There's a bunch of random guys on this team. MJ really just takes his team to the next level. If he stays, I believe he would have at least 7 rings. He would have at least another ring, maybe even 2 more rings, which would put him over the top and completely knock out LeBron James from the conversation of the GOAT. What do you think of that, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to debate if you have about 7 to 8 rings. I mean, with how good LeBron's been, I don't think he can really match with the 7 to 8 rings that MJ would have had. So I think MJ would be no doubt the best player of all time, and I mean, there's just no doubt.
All right, so let's switch to some football. Tom Brady, the greatest quarterback of all time, 7 rings. How did he get his first start? Drew Bledsoe, I believe he was the number 1 overall pick, got injured. Matt. But suppose Drew Bledsoe never got this injury. What do you think would have happened?
Tom would be the present day Brian Hoyer, just a guy who's sitting on the bench behind the starting quarterback, coming in a couple games of the year to kind of just fill the role of the hurt quarterback. And I mean, unless he like got traded and their quarterback went down, I don't think he really would have had a shot. So Tom Brady with his 7 rings, it may not ever have happened if Drew Bledsoe didn't go down.
It was week 2 of the 2001 NFL season. Bledsoe was very injured, as what it says. It was in the fourth quarter of a 10-3 loss to New York. No one would have ever thought that when Mo Lewis leveled Drew Bledsoe, that this would change the course of NFL history. If Drew Bledsoe, this is what happened to him. He had a concussion, a collapsed lung, and internal bleeding. He nearly died from this. This is a thing that doesn't happen. Like, this isn't a normal injury in the NFL. This was something catastrophic. And Brady just took over. I mean, he led this team to an 11-3 record in his first season, and they won the Super Bowl over the greatest show on turf, the St. Louis Rams. I mean, this is unbelievable, story wise. But if Drew Bledsoe doesn't get hurt, Tom Brady might never, as you say, have become an NFL starting quarterback, which is absolutely unbelievable. I mean, if you look at this guy, he was a 6th-round pick, the last pick in the NFL, and he was tall. He had an average arm. He had decent accuracy, but he wasn't jumping off the books obviously as a draft prospect. So to think that Tom Brady might never have played an NFL had to start in the NFL is just unbelievable. And just because of one hit changed the course of NFL history, it's just insane.
Yeah, I mean, Tom came in as a pretty standard quarterback guy who sits in the pocket, throws some darts out there. Came from Michigan. If you take some picture like take a look at some pictures from his draft day, I mean, he was not fit. I mean, you could tell that running his 40, I could go out there right now and just run a quicker 40 than him. So just the type of quarterback he's become, standing in their pocket, throwing some dimes to guys like Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. I mean, it's been an incredible ride with him being, I think, what is it, 44 now? Yeah, I think he's 44. So if Drew Bledsoe never went down with an injury, I mean, we could have missed out of the one of the best quarterbacks of all time, if not the best.
Great points, Matt. All right, we're going to wrap this episode up of But Suppose. Ladies and gentlemen, though, I got to say this. If you have other scenarios, sports or non-sports, you would like us to talk about and give our takes on it, totally put it in the comments. Just text me, DM me, whatever you want to do. Don't forget us to follow us on all our social medias. Twitter at _OTC podcast _ Instagram at On the Couch Podcast 19. Don't forget to follow us on our 2 YouTube channels. We got On the Couch Podcast, our straight podcast YouTube channel, and then our second channel, the OTC Gaming / Vlogging channel. That's it for this episode. I'm Nazario Pangallo.
And this is Matt Kappas.
Peace out.